Gau Shanti Raja Shanti Shanti Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shanti Shantireva Shanti Shantir Me Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om.
Good morning. We'll sing That Man God Loves on page 15.
16.
16, sorry. Who knows of
Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayeti Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. Our subject today is the ideal spiritual teacher. And I thought the best way to reflect on this theme is to study one composition, one hymn that Shankaracharya in the 8th century wrote. So this is 1300 years old, the text that you have in your hands. In Sanskrit, it's called Yati Panchakam. Panchakam is 5, Yati, 5 verses on a Yati. The Sanskrit word Yati can be traced to two related meanings. One who strives and one who practices restraint. Now traditionally, the word Yati has been applied to ascetics and monks. But really, it applies to all spiritual seekers because two of the essential characteristics of spiritual seekers would be that there is restraint, that we have the mind under control. The mind is the instrument that can help us transcend all our limitations. But it's an instrument that is under control. It's like the car. The car is a great instrument to go from one place to another. And car can help us reach our destination safely, but only if the car is under control. If the car is not under my control, then it may take me someplace else. Exactly in the same way, the mind is my instrument. And if the mind is under control, it can take me to where I want my mind to go. So, two characteristics for Yati, control and striving. Clearly, we are all striving, but when we strive for an spiritual ideal, an ideal that transcends our immediate needs in this world, then that striving is what spiritual seekers do. Because really, spiritual seeker, you're seeking the spirit which is not something which is of immediate experience to us, at least something that we are not able to recognize it as spirit. So, striving and restraining. When we have both of these qualities as applied to spiritual life, we can consider ourselves as spiritual seekers. Even the word ascetic or monk, to which the word Yati is often used, applies to all spiritual seekers. Sri Ramakrishna said, you'll find this in his Gospel of Ramakrishna and that Conversations. This is what he said. Mention is made of two classes of yogis, the hidden and the known. The words that he used in the original Bengali were Gupta Yogi and Vyakta Yogi. Gupta is hidden, Vyakta is that which is recognized, that which is known. So those who have renounced the world are known yogis, all recognize them. So there are external signs of detachment, external signs of giving up. So those who formally take the vows of monasticism, so they have a specific robe, they have a specific name, they can be easily identified in a crowd. So they are known yogis, all recognize them. But Ramakrishna says, but the hidden yogis live in the world. They are not known. So detachment, when we practice internal detachment, nothing will change externally. No one will know outwardly because you're not wearing any special robes, you're not changed your name, you are apparently like everyone else. But internally, your outlook on life, your outlook on the world, how you see yourself, how you see others around you is completely changed. So the essential characteristic for spiritual seekers, or to be a yogi, again, the word yoga itself means one who strives to join that infinite being. The essential characteristic is detachment. That detachment, as I've often pointed out, is primarily an inner quality. So inner detachment is a must for all spiritual seekers, and that is a detachment from one's own ego. Now, external detachment, external way that detachment gets manifested, may occur in some cases, may not occur in some other cases. Once M, the recorder of the Gospel of Ramakrishna, he asked Sri Ramakrishna this question. He said, what is it that determines who will renounce the world and take up to monastic life, and who will live in the world like everyone else? What distinguishes these two people? What determines that one will do this and the other will do that? And Sri Ramakrishna's answer is very significant. He said, it is the will of God. So whether we live in the world, once Swami Brahmananda said, who lives out of the world? Everyone is in the world. But when we use the word in the world in the sense that, well, monasticism is not really a way or a path that is common. I think maybe just a small fraction of the percentage of the population in the whole world are monks. So the majority are not following the monastic path. So living in the world is generally considered what most people do. What Sri Ramakrishna pointed out was that whether we live in the world or renounce and join a monastery or a convent, what is common as spiritual seekers is this inner sense of detachment, the inner sense of letting go of things which are non-essential. Now, external may occur in some cases, but not in other cases. Where we are is not necessarily an indication of how much detachment we have. It's not even an indication of how much we love God. So it's primarily an internal thing. And in that sense also, the word yati applies to all spiritual seekers. So what we will do in the next few minutes is quickly go through these 5 verses. One more thing I want to point out before we go to the text itself. The one phrase that occurs again and again in all the 5 verses, the concluding is Kaupinavantaha Khalu Bhagyavantaha, which are translated as blessed indeed are the spiritual seekers. The word in Sanskrit is Kaupinavanta. Now Kaupina is literally means Kaupinavanta literally means one who wears a kaupina. Now kaupina is a breechcloth or a loincloth. So again, some of these yogis living in the Himalayas or living austere lives in deep forest, so they wore minimum cloth that was necessary. The idea is this, not that what is the extent of cloth you wear and how big or how small it is, but the idea is, are we living according to our basic needs or according to our greed? What is the motivating factor in our lives? The things that we do, the things that we have, are those the things that we need, or are those the things that I have come to possess as a result of my greed? So that would be an interesting kind of a homework we all can do privately, is at some point we can ask ourselves, how much of what I have is what I really need? How much of what I have is somewhat superfluous? And how much of what I have is just my greed? It's not even superfluous, it's absolutely not needed. And again, that's just for our own reference. Sometimes it will be interesting to see which are the things we absolutely need. And those who live in California, in Southern California, especially during the fire season, many of them have to kind of, if there is a fire raging nearby, many of them have to just keep you obviously can't take away everything at your home. So a lot of people then keep some most essential things ready, that in case it's necessary to evacuate, you can just go. And then that time, it's a thing that automatically external circumstances force us then to ask ourselves, what is it that I really need? If my home were to completely be devoured by fire, let's say, which are the things I would like to save? Which are the things that are most important to me? Years ago, when I went to Kailash in Tibet, that was, again, it was a very strenuous trek. You really can't carry much with you. In fact, even at that height, even carrying a water bottle was too much. And yet, it was an eye-opener in many ways. In 3 weeks, you live in that kind of a very hostile terrain in many ways. And then you realize, well, you still survived. It was fine. It was possible to live without many of the things that we normally think is, oh, life would be impossible without it. And then you find, no, life is possible with it. Not that we need to give it all up, but it's good to recognize at some point that we can survive just fine with very little of what we have, that many of the things are not really absolutely necessary. Now, it's good for us to recognize that at some point, it's not the amount of things that we have, amount of the things that we possess, but how much of those things possess us. That's important. It's possible to just have a breechcloth, just have copine and nothing else, and yet be the most attached person in the world. Because the mind, greed is not exactly the material things that you have. What's your mind filled with? It's possible to have nothing. It's possible to be completely homeless and completely penniless and yet be filled with greed. And it's possible to apparently have a bunch of things and yet not be attached to them. So again, this has to be we have to keep it clear. It's not just the physical presence of things around us, but the mental sense of ownership. How much do I feel these are mine? And this is what I own. That's the problem, not the things themselves. In fact, in Sri Ramakrishna's time, there were some people who were critical. He was a Paramhamsa, one of the highest orders of yogis, but he didn't live with simply a kaupina. In fact, he was very well dressed, and you can read the description. And some of the people were saying, oh, he says he's a yogi, but he wears polished sandals and he has this coat. And so it's possible that externally some people might be critical and saying, well, how is that a renunciation? And yet those of us who have studied Ramakrishna's life know. And of course, as we will see even today, it's the detachment or renunciation or the idea of possession. These are all primarily inner characteristics. And that's the important thing to keep in mind. Okay, so now let's quickly go through these 5 verses. So there is, on top you'll find it's given in a Sanskrit text. Now it's been transliterated into English, and then there is a translation. Would you be interested in chanting along with me? Or after me? That'll be good. Okay. So I will say a part of the phrase, and you can repeat. It's good just to kind of hear the sound of it, and then you will be able to read. If you cannot read the Sanskrit portion, you can read it from the Roman transliteration, and then we'll look at the translation. Okay. All right. Vedanta vakyeshu sadaramanto. Bhikshanna matrena chatushtimantaha. Vishokavantah karunaikavantah. Kaupinavantah khalu bhagyavantah. So blessed indeed are the spiritual seekers who delight in dwelling always on the teachings of Vedanta, who are quite content with food received as alms, and who are without sorrow and who are full of compassion. Dwelling always on the teachings of Vedanta, that's the first phrase. Vedanta vakyeshu sada ramanto. There is one of the ancient Vedanta texts, not as ancient as this hymn, that this probably comes from 15th or 16th century text. It has one very interesting instruction. How much and how often should we think about the spiritual ideal? The things, and those of us who are Vedanta students, and so we read about these ideas, we know, but how long do we have to think about these ideas? And then that phrase says in Sanskrit, it goes like this: Asuptehe amritehe kalam nayet vedanta chintaya. Kalam, time. Kalam nayet, spend your time Vedanta chintaya, thinking about the truths in Vedanta. How often? For how long? Asuptehe, until you fall asleep. Amritehe, until you die. So, until sleep overcomes us, until death comes, we must keep on thinking about these truths of Vedanta. And of course, then the idea is, well, if I have to, then when will I do all my other things? If this is what I have to be thinking all the time, then I have so many other things to attend to. The good news is that these things can go together. So it's not that if you do this, you cannot do the other thing. And the example, which is something that we all can quickly identify with or understand, is a toothache. When you have a toothache, I'm sure at some time or other, all of us have had toothaches. And we have also experienced that you call up the dentist's office and then very rarely would the dentist say, come right away. Usually you'll be given an appointment maybe a day later or a few days later or maybe some weeks later. Now, what do? You have some time before you go to your dentist, but the toothache is there. You don't stop doing other things. You have things to do and you do. But while you're doing everything else, you are simultaneously aware of the toothache. And in spite of the toothache, you keep on doing. Maybe it could be a little bit of a hurdle, but you still go about. Most of the things that we do, we can do alongside the presence of a toothache. This is a kind of God ache, if you like. And it's not necessarily always painful. In fact, it can be very joyful. So the awareness that this is a goal that I am striving for. I mean, just think about it. To remember I'm the birthless and deathless one. I am divine. I don't think it's very particularly aching. I think it's something that will in fact bring us a lot of energy, a lot of strength, a lot of hope, a lot of joy. So if somehow in some corner of our heart, this idea, as in a theistic language, in the language of devotion, I'm a child of Ramakrishna, I'm a child of Holy Mother, I'm a child of God. We can keep that awareness and alongside that carry out all the duties and the responsibilities that we have. In fact, if we are able to keep this spiritual awareness in some corner of the heart, the quality of our work will improve. The efficiency will improve. So not only will it not be a hurdle in what we do, it in fact can enhance the quality of our life. And that is what is meant by dwelling always in the teachings of Vedanta. So please do not think that this would mean that you have to say, give up many of the things that you are doing. Who are quite content with food received as alms. Now, of course, those who are monks go and beg from home to home. They don't cook their own food, so that's alms. But we say, well, we don't have to necessarily go and beg for food. But what is the attitude I bring to the food that I eat daily? When monks go and beg for food, the food that they receive is with the firm conviction that this has come through the grace of God. There is gratitude, and then there is the awareness that whatever we get in life comes to the grace of God. So again, you can continue to eat wherever you're eating. If you're a good cook yourself, or there's someone who prepares delicious food, enjoy your food by all means. But when you eat, how often do we remember that what we eat is not like, oh, I have cooked it, or it's something I own, or I have earned it, I'm going to relish it. It's true, you can relish it. But simultaneously, if I can remember that I'm grateful for this food in front of me, that but for the grace of God, this wouldn't have come. So just this awareness that whatever we get in life comes through a higher grace changes the way we deal with food. And again, food is not just the food that we eat during lunch, dinner, and breakfast. Even the food for the mind, that is food as well. So whatever we take, the ideas that we put into our head, whatever comes to us. So in other words, the Sanskrit word for food is ahara. Ahara means that which is literally translated, that which is taken in. So we take ideas through the mind. We ingest in so many different ways. So all of that, so long as it is healthy, it makes me stronger physically, mentally, morally, I must accept it with gratitude. And that's the meaning here of receiving everything without a sense of ownership. Food received as alms. Without sorrow, contentment is an important spiritual quality. If we are perpetually angry or upset or grumbling, it's very difficult to pray, worship, or meditate with that frame of mind. There has to be a sense of contentment. Sure, we may not have everything that we want in life. There are things that we want, but we may not have received. Some of our prayers may not have been fulfilled. Our present situation may be far from ideal. Even then, it's still possible to be contented. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive for something higher or better. It's not a prevention from striving something. But right at the moment, in this moment, what I have, I must be grateful, I must be contented. And that comes through a sense of gratitude. And that is what is meant by being without sorrow. Because Vivekananda was so joyful, and of course, all of them, Ramakrishna, Sharada Devi, you can see. And he says in one place that sometimes people asked him, why do you laugh so much? And then Swami Vivekananda said, we are the children of the ever blissful Divine Mother. Why should we be morose? And we see that in Ramakrishna's conversations again and again. We see how many jokes, how many stories. Sometimes you see some of these young disciples who they were rolling on ground with laughter. So moroseness or having a long face as if the whole burden of the world is upon you, that's not a sign of spirituality. So without sorrow and full of compassion, we need sensitivity. If spiritual seekers, if my own meditation is more important to me than someone who is suffering, then there is a problem. So spirituality is a call to go inside, to get in touch with the truth inside. But that does not mean I must become insensitive to what's happening outside. In fact, the more inside I go, the more I get in touch with my spirit, the more sensitive I'll become, the more compassion I will automatically develop. I don't have to go make let me put it this way. I don't have to become compassionate. I don't have to become loving. In fact, in Vedanta, we say you don't have to become anything. We have already become a lot of things. We have to just unbecome. If I can remove all the hatred from my heart, I will automatically begin to love everyone. Because loving everyone is my true nature. What prevents that nature from coming out is the presence of hatred. If that hatred goes away, love will automatically come. So that's what we need to do. We don't have to become unselfish. We don't have to be loving. We don't have to become compassionate. Just remove all the hatred from the heart. Remove all negativities from the heart. And compassionate nature will automatically come. Because, I say this because if we try to become compassionate, the danger is we might put on one more mask of being a compassionate person. And so we really need to remove all masks. So when we remove all masks, automatically compassionate nature will shine on its own. So blessed indeed are spiritual seekers who delight in dwelling always on the teachings of Vedanta, who are quite content with food received as alms, who are without sorrow, and who are full of compassion. Verse 2. Moolam tarov kevalamashrayantaha Panidvayam bhoktum amantrayantaha Kanthamiva shrimapi kutsayantaha Kaupinavantah khalu bhagyavantah. Blessed indeed are the spiritual seekers who seek shelter only under trees, who use only their hands for a plate, and who disregard even wealth as if it were a tattered piece of cloth. So who take shelter under trees. Vivekananda has that famous song of the Sannyasin. There's one line, he says, "Have thou no home? What home can hold thee, friend? The sky thy roof, the grass thy bed, and food what chance may bring, well cooked or ill, judge not." So have thou no home. Now we say, well, we don't want to be homeless. All of us have a home. So what does it mean when it says, take shelter only under trees? Again, what it means is this, that I need to be in the home without being a victim of that sense of ownership. Whatever we have, think about it this way. And it's very helpful to think about it this way. When we came into this world, we came with nothing. When we leave this world, we go with nothing. It's only this interim period after birth and before death that we have all these things. And during that period, we appropriate everything, mentally say, this is mine, this is mine. And that's a part of Maya, that we have this sense of ownership, and yet at any moment, it can be taken away. Death can devour us in a moment. It's very few people are fortunate enough to die slowly and gradually. It can come. We never know whether it's going to come slowly or at once, and one never knows which is better. But it can go. All of my pride and ego and ownership and everything can simply vanish in a moment. Suppose you, in the sleep, when you are sleeping and you are dreaming, and in your dream you are a billionaire, and there's nothing that you don't have. You have everything, and then you wake up. You've lost, all your billions have gone. It's as quick as that. Everything goes away. And that is why we can be grateful for everything that we have, but we don't depend on anything outside of us. If need be, we should be prepared to sleep under trees. God forbid that such a need may necessarily come, but there should be the mental preparation that I can have the benefit of everything that I have, but I'm mentally prepared that should anything occur and I may have to do away with the things that I need, which I think I own or are mine, I must be prepared for that. Because if I'm not prepared for that, I'm the one who is going to suffer. Nothing else is going to happen. Things that are going to happen will happen. No one can change them. But how I respond to them, how I react to them, that is under my control. who use only their hands for a plate. There is different monks or different orders of monks have different ways when they go out begging for food. There is one very austere group of monks who don't even carry a begging bowl. So they'll just go, and then they'll put their palms, and they will receive only as much food as can fit into their palms, and then eat it for the day, and it's done. So if you have small palms, it's not that helpful. Again, the idea is not that you using a plate and it's bad, but use everything that you have, don't depend on it. That for our bare subsistence, God has given us everything. So this can be a plate, this can be a spoon, this can be a fork. I mean, in India, I mean, when I was growing up, I've never used a spoon or a fork, and they just function just fine with this thing. So again, it's not that you shouldn't use a spoon, but we can do without it if need be. That's the idea. So, I mean, that's what independence is. What is freedom? Freedom means you depend as less as possible on things outside of you. And if freedom is what we seek, then we must see that there are fewer the things I depend on, the more free I am. That's the idea. And to disregard even wealth as if it were a tattered piece of cloth. Again, it means that the connection between wealth and happiness has to be broken. When we speak about in the Declaration of Independence, we speak about the pursuit of happiness. In the original draft, it was a pursuit of wealth. And then Thomas Jefferson changed that pursuit of wealth to pursuit of happiness. And of course, there's a lot of commentary and a lot of interpretation is possible. But it's interesting just to kind of look at it, why pursuit of wealth was changed to pursuit of happiness. We should not make the mistake of thinking that wealth equals happiness. Sure, but that doesn't mean wealth automatically equates sorrow. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm saying is to make this facile connection that more the wealth, more the happiness is not necessarily true. In fact, and then we don't need to go into a deep detail about this, that they have extensive studies have showed that as countries get richer, they don't necessarily become happier. And that's true even with individuals. And so recognizing the limitations of wealth, we don't have to allow wealth to possess us. So beginning, we start possessing wealth, and then wealth itself can possess us. That is, we then become a plaything, victims. We are being controlled like puppets by just this greed for more things in life. That's the idea here. You might remember the instance in Ramakrishna's life, when he once, in order to imprint firmly in the mind that, sure, wealth has a relative value. There are things you can go and buy with wealth. There are things, your needs can be met with wealth. But if you look at it in a deeper way, it's I mean, what is? It's just a piece of paper. As long as that piece of paper is recognized to have some value, it has some value. And then sometimes when the currency gets devalued, the same piece of paper becomes valueless. And in Ramakrishna's life, you know that, aware of that incident, he takes a stone and a coin and then says, well, in reality, both are material objects. True. So from a higher standpoint, no difference. Relatively, there is difference. In either case, we have to make sure to recognize what our spiritual goal and ideal is, that we shouldn't be controlled by factors and these relative values outside of us, because then that takes us away from the spiritual ideal. Verse 3. Swananda bhave paritushtimantah sushanta sarvendriya vrittimantah aharnisham brahma sukhe ramantah Kaupinavantah khalu bhagyavantah. Blessed indeed are the spiritual seekers who remain content in the bliss of the Atman, who have subdued the fluctuations of their senses and who remain immersed in the bliss of Brahman day and night. Content in the bliss of the Atman. The Sanskrit word that gets often used in the Upanishads is called Atmarama. All the bliss that we experience in life, all the joy that we experience in life really comes from our own true self. We mistakenly think that it is coming from persons, places, and things outside of us. Now that's our wrong perception. But the real joy comes only from the self. That's one thing. The second thing is, when we believe that the joy comes to me from outside, then that joy can never be permanent. Say if chocolate brings me happiness, then as long as the chocolate is in front of me, as long as I'm eating it, I'm happy. But it's going to finish, and then there is no more chocolate remaining, I'm going to be miserable. And so if my happiness depends on anything outside of me, it's going to be taken away from me. It can be taken away from me. The only entity that cannot be taken away from me is me. In other words, whatever can be taken away from me is not me. And so if I can find joy in my real me, in the self, in the Atman, then I can be always happy, because no one can take me away from me. And that is what this Atma Rama means, Atma Sukham. Swa Ananda Bhavi. Swa means the Atman, self, who have subdued the fluctuations of their senses. I mean, that is what yoga is. The second aphorism was about stilling the waves in the mind. So prayer, worship, meditation, whichever spiritual practice we do, the first thing that it does, it calms down our mind. Because only when the mind is calm is there clarity. Only then can I see the truth clearly. So the greatest hurdle of why I'm not able to hold that highest ideal in my mind continuously is that the mind is lashed into waves. And the first thing that therefore needs to be done is to subdue these fluctuations of the mind and the senses. And then we remain immersed in the bliss of Brahman day and night. Again, same thing what I said before. Day and night means, what do? We continue doing everything that we are doing now. It's possible to carry out all our duties and responsibilities while remaining immersed in the joy of Brahman. And the best instrument we have to do this is the practice of Karma Yoga. Because no one can live without work. We all have lots of things to do. We have lots of duties, a lot of responsibilities, a lot of work. Can I do work in a way that instead of cutting me off from my spiritual ideal, it in fact not only connects me to the ideal, but in fact accelerates my progress to the spiritual ideal? And that's possible. So when I do karma as a yoga, when I do work as a form of spiritual practice, I can remain connected with that truth all the time. So it's possible, literally possible, to be dwelling in that truth day and night. There's that little book some of you may have read, Practice of the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence. It's a tiny little book, deceptively simple. It's interesting. When you read that book, you think, wow, this is something, yeah, I must start doing it. But only when you sincerely try to begin practicing, then you realize it's not as easy as it looks. Remember, practicing God's presence in every little thing that we do may take time. What we can begin by doing is, can I practice the presence of God at least when I'm praying, at least when I'm doing my japa, at least when I'm meditating? That's the good beginning. So at least when I'm doing my meditation, am I practicing the presence of God? By practicing the presence of God, I mean, while I'm at it, while I'm at my prayer, japa, meditation, I don't allow my mind to think of anything else. I do my practice with the complete awareness that God is present. So you're not just, if you're sitting before an altar, you're not just sitting before a framed picture of your spiritual ideal. That God is really present. Your Ishta, your chosen ideal is really present. That is practicing the presence of God. And if I can do it, even for a few minutes during my prayer, japa, and meditation, then there is hope that I will be able to do it even after my meditation is over, even before I begin my meditation. That's how we can expand that consciousness of the divine in our lives. Verse 4. Dehadibhavam parimarjayantah atmanam atmanyavalokayantaha nantam na madhyam na bahismarantah kaupinavantah khalu bhagyavantah. Blessed indeed are the spiritual seekers who have transcended their body identity, who have seen the self in the Atman, and who have become free from the shackles of space and time. What is body identity? Simple awareness. As long as I feel I'm a human being, I have body identity. You just cannot get away from that simple truth. Intellectually, those of us who have studied now Vedanta for a while, intellectually we might understand the body is only a covering, the mind is only a covering, that I am the Atman, I am the spirit, which is great. So that awareness that I am the spirit is still intellectual. But as long as I have this dominant identity, as long as I have no doubt whatsoever that I am a human being, I am still identified with the body. So what this first phrase says is, we have transcended the body identity. In other words, how often in a day, as a spiritual seeker, I'm able to not think of myself as a human being? Well, if I'm not a human being, what are the other options? What are the other things I could be? Well, one thing we could be is, when I'm praying or meditating, depending on how you relate yourself to the ideal, you say, I'm a child of God, or I'm a servant of God. That's an identity. At that time, it really doesn't matter whether you think of yourself as a human being or not. But dominant at the uppermost layer of your consciousness, you're not thinking about a human being or what any other being. You're just thinking that I'm a devotee of God. I'm a child of God. So, how often does I'm able to go beyond this identity connected with human identity? And of course, as I've mentioned on earlier occasion, we have several identities. When you go to see the ball game, you think, well, I'm a Sox fan. Well, that's an identity too. But underlying all those identities, you're still a human being. You are a human Red Sox fan, if you like. But there is one other way by which this identity can be at least shaken a little bit. And that is when you connect that identity with God. That I'm a child of God, I'm a servant of God, whichever way. Or in a more philosophically, I'm the spirit. The body and mind are only coverings, but I am more than just this body and mind. There is this deeper reality within me. That is who I am. If I can think about myself in that way, even for 30 seconds, well, I have succeeded, at least for 30 seconds, in not thinking of myself as a human being. And if I can do it for 30 seconds, that's already good. Then I just need to extend it, maybe for a minute, maybe for 5 minutes. And who is an enlightened being? An enlightened being is one who 24/7, 365, just thinks of himself or herself as in divine terms. That's the only difference. So we can already start being kind of part-time enlightened beings, even if we can do it for a few seconds or a few minutes. But it's good to begin somewhere. If we think that, oh, right now I'm unenlightened, I'm ignorant, so I'm just going to be this human. And then when I become enlightened, that time I will think of myself as a spirit. It's never going to happen. I have to begin now. Our attempts may be very imperfect. We'll fail miserably several times, but don't get disheartened. Keep on making an effort, and then slowly we will see that this awareness gradually begins to take root, gradually begins to occupy some corner of our heart. And then we just need to expand it. So it's doable, provided there is intensity, provided we are willing to persevere, provided we are willing to strive. That's why the yati, the one who strives, who have seen the self in the Atman. Again, as long as my self is in the body, there is body identity. When my self is in the mind identity. So when my self is in the Atman, that is the spiritual identity. So where I locate myself, that determines what identity I have. And we have become free from the shackles of space and time. Maya, this cosmic delusion, is often considered the domain of space, time, and causality. As long as we are caught up, and one way clearly is how much of our lives are just unthinkable without the idea of past, present, and future. We have to deal with our past. There are the memories of the past. There are the anxieties, hopes, worries about the future. And then, of course, there is a present. But these are very fluid boundaries. Think about it this way. What we see as yesterday, but yesterday was today, yesterday. And what is tomorrow now will be today, tomorrow. So again, so this past, present, and future is a continuously moving thing. It's like a relative motion. We think that time is passing and that we are kind of stationary, but actually it's the opposite. Time is stationary in some sense, and we are the ones who are moving. That is why there is a Bhartrihari, the great poet saint. He writes, Kalona yata vayameva yata. Time doesn't move. Time doesn't go anywhere. It's we who go. And therefore, going beyond this domain of time, transcending space, is what spiritual seekers strive to do. Final, last verse. Brahmaksharam pavanamuccharanto Brahmahamasmiti vibhavayantaha Bhiksha shino dikshu paribhramantav Kaupinavantav khalu bhagyavantaha. Blessed indeed are the spiritual seekers who repeat the sacred mantra, who meditate on their identity with the divine, and who wander freely everywhere while living on alms. Repeat the sacred mantra is a practice of japa. Meditating on their identity is really having some relationship with God. When we think of God, how do we relate ourselves with that God? And there is no one common formula for everyone. There are things that we share in common, but we are also very unique. Every one of us is unique. And therefore, how we relate to God is our own unique way of relating to God, which is fine. So long as we hold on to that connection steadily and proceed along that, at some point, that relationship gets matured to an extent it gets converted into identity. And wander freely everywhere is that final teaching of Holy Mother. No one is a stranger, my child. The whole world is your own. We can go anywhere freely, provided we truly feel the world is our own, not feel a stranger in any place. And there's a lot to think about that teaching that Sharada Devi gave. So I would encourage you to we just have seen some very broad brush strokes of what this hymn has to offer. But I'd encourage you to keep the copy that you have, take it home, and then whenever you have some free time, to read it in a calm way and see what ideas come. Besides the few ideas that were aired today, you might find some newer ideas might come. You might be able to relate to some of these teachings and connect it with your own life situation. And some wonderful insights will come which will help you to strengthen your own spiritual life. So there's a lot to reflect on, and the more we do this, we will find that our spiritual life will become more strong, more robust. And that's very important, because obstacles will always come, dangers will always come. And the weaker we are, the more vulnerable we become to them. So the idea is to become strong. And Vivekananda used to say, strength is what the Upanishads speak to me from every page. So that's the beauty of these teachings of Vedanta, that they make us strong. They instill within us that great confidence, that great faith. Because unless we have that real faith in ourselves, our faith in God is of no use. And so that strength will come to us if we reflect on texts like these, and then reflect on our own life and see what we can learn from it and how we can become better and more mature spiritual seekers. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. We bow down to Ramakrishna and Holy Mother again and again. This Wednesday, we will have the study group meeting as usual. We'll continue with the study of the chapter 9 of the Gita. On Tuesday and Saturday, the Arati and meditation will also be held as usual. And next Sunday, we meet again for satsang at 11. And our subject will be, where shall I stay? Under a tree, maybe. so we'll reflect on the topic, where shall I stay? We'll conclude with a prayer now on page 3 of your books. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto you.